What's going on, everybody? It is Aaron Trevino here. We have another wonderful guest from beautiful Dallas, Texas. We have John Okocha. How's it going, John?
Going amazing. How about yourself?
I'm doing just fine. It's a great time of year. Thanksgiving, Christmas approaching. The weather's getting a little cooler, not as humid, so I'm happy with it.
Yeah, it's a great time of the year. Leaves are changing colors.
That's right. That's right. John. So for those of us who aren't too familiar with you, would you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, my name is John Okocha. I'm a multifamily investor here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I currently have over 1,600 units on the GP side, as far as like interest stake in the GP side. And right now, I'm actually launching a fund. So we're launching a fund that specializes in mezzanine debt for C, B, and A class properties in the southeastern part of the United States.
All right, very good, very good. And I'm curious as well, just a bit about your background. I know that you're in multifamily right now. Have you always been in multifamily, or what got you interested in real estate itself?
Yeah. So how it all started with me is I read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad. And when I read that book, it completely changed my perspective on investing, money, and just how financials work in general. So I read that book, started going to some different seminars, and I met my first millionaire. Met a lady by the name of Jamie Connors, and she was on The Apprentice. Which is pretty interesting. While I was there, that I was taught a couple of things about wholesaling. So I started wholesaling a little bit. I went from wholesaling, went into college, then graduated from college. Decided I wanted to add interest in financial advising and wealth management. So I became a financial advisor. Uh, After about a year, I was like, I don't want to do this. I want to do real estate. And then, yeah, got onto the single family side, got my real estate license. Went from there. Then I started doing acquisitions for a smaller investor in the single family side. And after that, I started working in multifamily, and then basically never looked back. Went from 27 units to over 2,000 doors in less than 2 years.
Wow, it's incredible. It almost seems like I don't know, maybe the changing to, your foundation and your mental framework. It started with that book. What do you think it is about Rich Dad Poor Dad that speaks to you and speaks to people in general?
Well, it wakes you up. It makes you realize that it breaks the program. You know, Growing up, you're taught to believe that in order for you to get to the next level, you have to have an education, and this education can basically only come from college or these learning institutions. Um, and when you read a book like that, it makes you realize that in order to get a lot of money or in order to become rich, that you don't necessarily need to get a degree, and that it takes a special form of information. It takes, actually understanding and looking for opportunities that school doesn't necessarily teach you how to do. School doesn't really teach you how to look for deals. School doesn't really teach you how to see opportunity when other people are running away from a certain situation. You know, yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, if anyone has grown up, whether it's, in a public school, a private school, just being a part of, Western culture in general, I guess being here in America, there are certain things that are kind of inculcated in you from a young age. And, I'm sure it must have been tough for you to kind of have those paradigm shifts and kind of a different way of seeing things and operating.
Well, yeah, that's a really good point. It's interesting because I think growing up, and probably growing up on your side as well, there's probably a lot more entrepreneurial spirited people around you, that you can kind of relate to. Some people were more on that, you know, get a job and then save up money and then go into different deals. And then there are other people that are like, you know what, I'm going to start doing business right now. One of my best friends in high school, like, who's extremely entrepreneurial spirited, and he's the one who actually recommended Rich Dad Poor Dad to me. I mean, this guy was selling candy. I mean, he was selling watches. I mean, he just sold a lot of different things and had that entrepreneurial spirit, and really gave me a person to bounce my ideas off of.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you drew on a really interesting point there, and it kind of sounds like we're talking about community, right? Um, and, and it's so interesting where kind of you had this paradigm shift in your head. Maybe growing up, people see John a certain way. Old John would have thought and believed this, but you've really gone on this journey and you've achieved these things, and you're working in a different space. How are you able to kind of build that community of like-minded people that are going along with you?
You have to seek it out. That's the only way. You have to go to where your future self is. If you want to be in private equity, you go to private equity meetings. If you want to be a real estate investor in Dallas, Texas, you go to real estate investment meetings in Dallas, Texas. It's really that simple. If you want to become a chef, you go hang out with chefs, and you're going to learn something that you're not going to be able to learn in books. They're going to give you some inside knowledge or inside connections that you're not going to be able to find in books or online.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, like anything, making that first step, whether it's real estate or any sort of endeavor that you have in life, it can be it can be nerve-wracking for people, right? And it's kind of I mean, maybe you're dealing with that sort of imposter syndrome, I don't belong here. I'm out of my league, right? Then the bad negative thoughts start creeping in. How do you fight against that?
That's a really good question. You have to have good people around you. You get it. There's some times where you're like, am I supposed to be doing this right now? And then they're like, what do you mean? Like you're well overqualified for this. I mean, like look at what you've done so far. That sort of thing. You just have that. You have the good people around you. You gotta know why you're doing it. You gotta always have your goals in front of you. Me, I have photos of people that I want to work with, people that I want to do deals with. I always have pictures of them, and I try to look at the pictures of them almost every single day if I when I get the chance. So you have to keep your goals in front of you, and you have to consistently remind yourself where you're going.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's so interesting as well. You mentioned, reminding yourself of where you're going, especially with, the way maybe the past 24 months have been for people. There's been a lot of changes, not only across the world, but also in, the business culture. The business climate is different. It's kind of like we're stepping into this new way of operating and doing business that we've never really seen before.
I couldn't agree more. The world has really changed in the last 24 months. Where a lot of people have gotten more online. We've seen a record number of people quitting their jobs, and myself included. There's a huge push. I think there's an even bigger push towards entrepreneurship as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm curious about this as well. Obviously, because you are an entrepreneur, and it sounds like you are, you have your own endeavors. Do you think entrepreneurs are born, or are they made?
It's a really good question. I think it's both. I think that entrepreneurs can be made, but they can also be born as well. I think that they can potentially inherit it from their parents, but I also think that entrepreneurs can be molded. I think that if you hang out with enough entrepreneurs, you're going to become an entrepreneur.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I definitely agree with that. I do find it interesting how, I mean, like you mentioned, the guy, he's selling candy, I don't know, there was always that guy in school, maybe selling baseball cards or whatever it may be. And then, maybe there's people that later on in life, they find out that, they have these particular skills and attributes and positive aspects to themselves. And then, maybe later on they put it all together, right?
100%. 100%. I agree.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's funny. I don't know, have you ever heard of the book The Sovereign Individual?
The sovereign individual. Tell me about it.
Yeah, no, I've only read a few chapters of it. I, admittedly need to finish the rest, but it is interesting. It kind of talks about I could get the word wrong, but it's mostly like the four epochs of I guess of really just humanity, right? So the first would be, we were hunter gatherers, right? Hunting animals, foraging in the forest, looking for food. Second would be agricultural, right? So, we're farming, we're getting things from the land, and then, obviously surviving off that. Thirdly, industrialization. obviously, big factories, corporations, companies. And then it's talking about the fourth epoch, that being the digital era, right? Which we're really just stepping into now. And it feels like we're kind of staring into the abyss, right? We're going where really no one has been before.
Mm-hmm. 100%. Yeah, I agree. I mean, look at NFTs, look at the blockchain, look at cryptocurrency. This is a place that no one has ever been before, and we're navigating it right now. And there's so much disruption in the process, so there's a lot of opportunity.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I do always respect the entrepreneurial spirit. And I'm curious about you as well. I mean, obviously you talked a bit about your education, you being in financial advising for a bit, you pivoting into real estate. What was your first real estate role and how did you get started?
Well, my first, well, just in general on the real estate side, the first thing I
Mhm.
did,
Yeah.
it was a wholesale deal. First thing I did was wholesale a deal. I wholesaled a property on the east side of Fort Worth. It was on, I believe it was on East Haiti Street. I got it under contract, and I was 17. I got it under contract. Yeah.
Wow. How about that? How about that? And it sounds, I mean, for those of us who aren't too familiar, would you be able to, briefly explain what wholesaling is?
Yeah, essentially what wholesaling is what you do is you find a motivated seller. Now this is somebody that needs to sell the property. Maybe they're going through a rough time, foreclosure, divorce. Essentially, they need to get cash for the property, and they need to get it in a short amount of time. So they're not typically going to go with somebody through the conventional route where they need to wait 30 days to get a loan, and then you know them to buy the property. Instead, what they want is cash, so they're willing to take a discount. They're willing to take they're willing to sell it for a discount. So what you do is you go and you get that you locate that motivated seller, you get it under contract at a certain price, and then you flip that contract to an investor for a fee, and that's wholesaling.
All right. Yeah, that was a great write up, great synopsis there with wholesaling. Yeah, I mean, it seems like that's definitely a good way. I mean, it's a great way to learn the industry. At least that's from what I've heard from friends and other people in the industry. So you've wholesaling and flipping, and I'm curious, how exactly did you transition to where you're at now with multifamily? Like, what really spoke to you about pivoting to multifamily?
Pivoting to multifamily. So I always wanted to do multifamily. Um, my first mentor, he put me on his cash buyers list, and I saw an apartment building on that, and I was like, "Wait, what? You can wholesale an apartment complex?" And he's like, "Yeah, you can wholesale anything." And then I saw him put like a mall on there, and and then a skyscraper on there, and I'm like, "Okay, I got to figure this stuff out." As soon as I saw that apartment building, it just immediately sparked my interest, and I knew I wanted to wholesale an apartment building. Um, Started looking for more courses on it. Eventually found another mentor on it and started working on an apartment deal at a a long time ago. This is actually when I was in my sophomore year no, this is my sophomore year of college, trying to work on a whole apartment deal. And the only reason why I didn't go through is because I didn't really know that much about contracts, and we secured the buyer, but we didn't secure the seller. So we secured the investor we were going to flip it to, but we didn't secure the actual seller. We agreed to a price and everything, but then he got cold feet at the end, and we missed out on a 100K wholesale fee.
Mm.
Um, so that's kind of how I got into apartments. But when I really started diving deeper into apartments was maybe about 3 years ago, when I worked for a company called Elevate, and we went from 27 units to about 2,000 units in less than a year. I was the first hire. Got about 400 units under contract within the first 30 days, and then just never looked back.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I'm just trying to think, of someone who maybe they've flipped homes, maybe they've done new construction, they've done the wholesale, and they're looking to transition into multifamily. You know, I guess about real estate in particular, the multifaceted part of the industry. It seems very, not only broad, but it's so vast. There's so much to know. If you're looking to break into multifamily, where should you start to kind of give yourself that foundation of knowledge?
That's a really good question. I'd say it really just depends on what the strengths of the individual is. If they like looking for deals, they can start on the acquisition side. If they're really good with people, really good at talking to people, they can also do investor relations as well. So they can raise capital. So you got acquisitions, raising capital. You also have asset management. So if you're good at managing properties, you can be on the asset management or property management side. But I think the best way to get into multifamily, which is the way I did, I can only speak from my experience, is find someone that has a gap that you can fill. The guys that I worked with, they needed somebody in acquisitions because they didn't have enough time to look for deals. And me, I already had a really good. I was already known for being able to find deals. So they're like, hey, come work with us. I'm like, yeah, say less. Like, where do I sign up? You know.
Yeah, no, and I love that perspective you have there, John. And it's really so refreshing, right? Because it's easy to, I don't know, it's easy to it's easy to break into an industry, with an open hand and say, hey, what can you give me? As opposed to, in a way, you yourself kind of reverse engineered that and said, hey, this is what I can offer someone else. I'm filling that gap, and then there you go.
Yeah, well, then that's how it works. That's how it works with value. You always want to bring value to the person that you're talking to, no matter who it is. And I would say, for the newer people that are listening, the people that are looking to get into real estate, don't be intimidated by anybody that you talk to. There's always potentially something that you could potentially bring to the table, even if it's just having a conversation, a simple conversation. And it doesn't have to be about real estate or business either. You know, there are other things of value that you can bring that might not necessarily be within the business realm.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I guess kind of how you mentioned, maybe for, some of the beginners who are new to the industry, maybe they're looking to pivot from something else that's unrelated to real estate. I mean, what, if they're a first timer and they're hungry, what is there really that they can offer as a value proposition?
Yeah, I guess it really just depends. It depends on what the person they're talking to, what they need. If you have, and it depends on the resources of the person that, it depends on the resources of the person that is looking to get into multifamily. I mean, if you have a lot of money, then you can provide money to the person that you're talking to. If you have a lot of time, then you can ask them like, hey, is there anything that I can kind of pick up the slack in? Is there anything that you're lacking in right now that you don't have someone that has the time to take care of? Like, I'll take care of it for you. So there's that. And then even just the connections, like, it's like, hey, do you have a good lender? Do you have a good banker? Like, I can connect you to so and so, that sort of thing. So it's really just finding what your superpowers are and then matching it to a need.
Yeah, no, I mean, that definitely makes a lot of sense, kind of, I guess maybe that comes down to a sense of self-awareness, right? Maybe being self-aware of, where your strengths lie and, maybe things you need to work on, and then vice versa, right?
That's 100%. That's the name of the game, is self-awareness, for sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, gave a great explanation of kind of, really how you got into the industry, a lot of, the foundation you built. And I know you mentioned how you used to work for Elevate. Now you've kind of branched off a bit. Tell us more about, what you're looking to do in the future.
Yeah, so I'm going to launch a fund that specializes in mezzanine and preferred equity investments. Right now, I'm brokering mezzanine deals for multifamily investors. And what we're going to do is we're going to focus on B and C class properties in the southeastern part of the United States and primary and secondary markets. So essentially, what we're going to do is we're going to be providing debt for sponsors who are looking to expand their portfolio that don't necessarily want to put all of their equity or all of their capital into one deal. They can put less of their capital into the deal, and that way they can do more deals. So what will happen is they'll partner with us, and now instead of doing just one deal, they'll do two deals.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's so interesting, kind of hearing about leveraging yourself in a way, right? It's kind of like, you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket or whatever the saying is, right?
Exactly. 100%. And that's how you want to do it. Like, you want to be able to do multiple deals, because if you do multiple deals, then you're spreading your risk.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And for you, I know you mentioned most of the southeastern United States. Are there any particular metro areas you're looking at, or is there any particular criteria aside from just the classes? Or
We're mainly sponsor focused.
Hmm.
We're going to rely on sponsors that have a lot of have really good track record. So that's where our main focus is. Our main focus is on sponsors that have a really good track record, that are in those target markets, um, that are looking to expand.
Sure, absolutely. And I mean, you're obviously in a hot market yourself. I mean, Dallas Fort Worth, it's on fire, right? I mean, there's so much growth and activity, and particularly, I'm assuming for multifamily, right?
Oh, it's everything. Everything's happening down here in DFW. I mean, you got like half of America moving to Texas, so
Yeah.
so it's a pretty interesting place to be. I mean, you're in one of the hottest markets in the world. You have so much money coming to Dallas Fort Worth, and you have, you know every other person I've talked to is not from Dallas.
It sure does seem that way. You see all these out-of-state license plates, at least when I was driving down the street this morning.
Oh yeah, I mean, you got like New York, you got Chicago, a lot of California people, all of that. But
Yeah, no,
it makes
completely.
things interesting, though.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. But yeah, I mean, you've done a great job kind of explaining maybe, your journey, your background, your foundation to where you are now, a bit about pivoting into multifamily. And you've also done a great job explaining, what you're looking to do in the future. So if there's any sort of, if there's any parting words you'd like to give, or any sort of, any last things you haven't said that you'd like to really hit home.
It would be to find the people who are doing what you want to do and latch on to them, because they're going to take you to where you want to go. That, I would say, that's the biggest thing. Find the people who are doing what you want to do and hang around them as much as possible. It really is that simple.
Yeah, no, it's definitely true, and it's interesting as well. I guess we were kind of talking a bit about, maybe those four epochs. We're living in the digital era. I know it sounds cliche, but there's almost no better time than now, right? It's kind of like
Percent.
one DM could change your life. You never know, right?
I couldn't agree more. And not just that, but I mean, so with Clubhouse, Clubhouse is another social media networking app, and I've met some extremely influential people on Clubhouse that I met in person, potential partners. I mean, I ended up flying over to Miami to meet Grant Cardone because of Clubhouse. I couldn't recommend social media more, especially nowadays. It's
Wow.
definitely a way to build a base of connections, and definitely a way to get investors as well. I mean, there's some investors that invested with us that we've never met before, that we got off of social media. So I highly encourage people to get on social media, to use their social media. It builds a lot of social proof, and it shows your investors, it shows everyone that follows you what you're doing. So there's less phone calls they need to do.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, it's definitely a good use of your time. I'm curious. I had no idea you met Grant Cardone. Well, how did that go down? What was that like?
That was pretty wild, and it's funny because Grant had a room, and I was in it, and one of my friends pulled me up into the area where people speak, and into this onto the stage. So he pulls me up onto the stage. I asked Grant a question, and Grant looks at my profile, and he's like, "You want to come work for us?" And I was kind of like, "There's no way you're gonna say no to Grant Cardone in front of like 3,000 people, right?" So I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, hook me up with your team, and like we'll go from there." And yeah, man, I flew to Miami, met his team, and I realized that I didn't want to work for him. I wanted to partner with him. So that's kind of how that ended. But while I was there in Miami, I met another investor at this sushi restaurant. And the next couple of weeks after that, I flew down to meet the investor. And while I was flying back to Dallas, I met a fund manager who I'm now working on seeing if I can do a deal with. And he just happened to be going to Dallas, just happened to be getting on the same plane, and just happened to not really know anybody in Fort Worth. So we like had dinner when we arrived in Fort Worth, and these guys own they just closed on like 400 units right on the highway in downtown Fort Worth. Yeah, I mean, it's completely insane. Like, it's completely insane. And then now one of my best friends just moved to Miami. I'm planning on moving to Miami. And that's all because of Clubhouse.
Wow. And that's incredible. And it's crazy, I guess kind of going back to, one DM could change your life, you just attending a small virtual, Zoom meetup or any sort of Clubhouse, whatever it may be. I mean, in a way, it kind of changed the direction of where you're going, right?
It completely changed the direction of where I was going. Completely. And it gave me a completely new perspective as well. I didn't know, I didn't know how accessible these people were. I went to a family office meetup because of a guy that I met on Clubhouse. He used to work for a fund in Dallas, who's now starting his own fund and quit his job. So we have like similar stories. And he was like, "Hey, John, I'll help you out. Like, let me know whatever you need." And this guy's speaking at like the SALT conference in Las Vegas. He's like speaking at these conferences with George Soros and stuff like just people like that. And I met him on Clubhouse. On Clubhouse.
That's incredible. You just kind of assume that these, I don't know, maybe it's the crazy movies that we watched as kids, that you assume that these rich people live in these, far away places and they're all only to themselves. But, you never know. It's legitimately the millionaire next door. Some guy in a beat up pickup truck could be a multimillionaire investing on your deal,
Yeah, that's what real estate has taught me. Real estate has taught me to never judge a book by its cover. Yeah. That's one thing real estate has taught me.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I find it interesting as well, just you talking about you going to Miami, going down there, meeting Grant Cardone in front of all these people. And, what I found interesting about you breaking down that story was, you were presented the opportunity to come and work for him, but yet at the same time, going back to that self-awareness, you had enough self-awareness to say, "Hey, I'm not actually wanting to be an employee. In fact, I'm wanting to have him as my partner."
100%. And it's not easy to make those decisions. Like, it takes a lot of courage to make those decisions, like, especially when you have people that are willing to sell their car and drive 300 miles to come see him, and willing to basically like kiss his feet to just to walk into his office. And but at the end of the day, you have to do what's right for you. At the end of the day, you have to, that you're not going, you can't sell your dream to someone. It doesn't matter how much they pay you. Like, you can't sell your dream to someone, so, or at least I'm not going to sell my dream.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that's a testament of courage and really faith, right? I mean, you just showing up to this Clubhouse thing, you just showing up to Miami, and then, you're putting one foot in front of the other, and then all of a sudden all these other people come in out of nowhere, right?
Yeah, 80% of it is just showing up. The only thing that stops people from achieving their goals is fear. That's another thing that I learned during this time of Corona.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm curious as well, I guess maybe on a less real estate related note, but you kind of talked about, a bit about faith and courage and fear. It's easy to cower, right? It's easy to lay down. It's easy to be afraid. How can you remain courageous in, unfamiliar territory?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a really, really good question. One of the things that I do that helps me is I skydive. I jump out of planes.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I'm not kidding. Yeah.
Yeah.
When I did my first skydive, that's when I quit my job. That gave me the courage to quit my job. Not well, my first solo, because I did a couple of skydives before that, but they were tandem, so I was connected to an instructor. But my first solo skydive, which I wasn't attached to an instructor. After that, I quit my job.
Really?
Yeah, and it's pretty wild because, like, I mean, I can't really explain it, but the feeling that you get from it, I mean, it's you go from the scariest thing you've ever done to the most blissful thing you've ever done.
Huh.
The scariest part is just jumping out. I mean, you're literally 14,000 feet in the air, and you look down and you're like, oh, that's death right there. Oh, I hope this parachute works.
Yeah. That's right. No, and it's crazy too, because I mean, you're fully responsible, right? You're packing the parachute.
Well, we didn't pack it.
Oh, they
Thankfully,
packed it for you?
they pack it for us,
Oh,
but
okay.
the thing is just like you just mentioned, you're fully responsible. And the thing, one of the things I like about skydiving is that it's real life. You know, when you move your arm just a little bit to the side like this, you turn around. You could turn and make an entire 360
Yeah.
by just making a small pivot with your arm, because you're falling at 120 miles per hour. But the thing is, I really believe that's how life works. You can just make a small pivot and it can completely turn the entire trajectory of your entire life. And also, when it comes to skydiving, um, if you don't take the proper procedures, like if you don't train, if you don't do all these things, like you're going to die.
Yeah.
You know? And that's I honestly, that's how life is. Like if you don't really, if you're not aware, like if you're not conscious, you're basically going to die,
Mm.
essentially. Like you have to be aware of what's going on around you. You have to be aware of yourself, and you have to trust yourself. That's the biggest thing. You have to trust yourself that you're actually going to pull the parachute, and you have to trust the technology that it's going to work, and you have to trust your trainer that they've trained you, and all of that. So it's extremely important. I think that it's more realistic to life than what we think it really is, because I think that now we have it really good because, like, back in the day, like when we were talking about like the hunters and gatherers, everything was more of survival. Now it's, since we can go to Walmart and get our meat from the fridge, like it's, it kind of makes us a little bit more lazy. I think that skydiving really puts life into perspective.
Yeah, no, I definitely like, you drawing those parallels between, it's not just me, jumping out of an airplane at 120 miles an hour. It's more of, there are actually life lessons to that, right? You
100%.
trusting yourself, you having the confidence in yourself, you trusting the person who packed that parachute, right? You trusting the training that you receive from another person, and, your ability to interpret that training and execute it, right?
Yeah, and when you do it, and when you get to the ground and you look up and you're just like, yeah, I just jumped out of the sky. Man,
Yeah.
I can't, there's no way to describe it. You just have to do it. It's one of the biggest things I'd recommend for anybody. And I really do believe that the difference between, essentially, people who go after the dreams and accomplish their dreams and people who don't is really fear. I really think that's the only difference.
I'm curious, when you say fear, it's do you find that people are afraid of failure, or more so afraid of success?
I Well, I can't really speak for everybody, but I can speak for myself. For me, it was afraid of what people would think. It's like, oh, like, oh, there's, what if he does this or what if he does that? Then understanding that it really doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter what people think. It really doesn't. And that's the truth. It really doesn't matter what people think. What matters is what you think.
Hmm.
What you think is the most important. Because at the end of the day, it's really just you. At the end
Yeah.
of the day, when the music stops, it's really just you. Like, it's not, they're not, all these other people that told you, oh, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that, and you don't want to die, uh, knowing that you didn't go after something just because your mom told you shouldn't do it. And your mom, all she was doing is just passing down her insecurities onto you.
Mm,
Most people just project insecurities. So that's why it's so important to have that self-awareness. And they say that I believe it's 1 point of EQ equals about $1,300 worth of extra income in the
mm,
business world. So it actually pays to have a higher emotional intelligence.
mm. I didn't know that, but I would believe that, right? Just given that, I mean, it is a soft skill that's often overlooked,
Yeah, and especially right now, I think that right now of all times that we're gonna need people that are highly emotionally intelligent, and are very, very self-aware. Because right now there is a huge gap in leadership. People are looking for people to follow, and people are not trusting each other. There are people that there's just a huge gap. There's a huge leadership gap. So I think that and I think one of the biggest things about being a leader is understanding yourself and understanding your boundaries, understanding the boundaries of other people, being able to get other people to work with each other, being able to communicate at a high level. So I think that all of those qualities are something that is going to be especially needed, especially right now, because people are looking for their mentor. They're looking for somebody to help them get to the next level.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, it's, kind of like we talked about, the digital era. In a way, it's kind of a paradox, right? It should be easy to find that mentor, but it really seems like you said, you really need to niche down and identify, hey, if I want to be a multifamily guy, where are the other multifamily guys hanging around, right?
Well, I think that with social media and technology, it can't replace genuine connection. I think that a lot of us have forgotten what it means to genuinely connect with people. And it takes being able to be vulnerable with people. So it takes being able to sit down and have a candid conversation. It's like, hey, man, like, I don't know if this is going to happen. Like, I don't really know this. I don't really know that. And it takes a lot of honesty. I think with social media, what it does is it highlights the good parts of what's going on, and people don't really know the bad parts of what's going on. Um, so there is that. And that comes along with emotional intelligence. Having the emotional intelligence to understand that when you look at somebody's social media page, that actually really isn't them, and understanding that. I think it's really important.
Yeah, no, completely. And I mean, it's easy to put, your highlights on there. I closed this. I did this with so and so, blah blah blah. But a lot of times, no one talks about the long weekends, the hard nights alone, working. Right? It's not sexy, right? And no one wants to talk about that, but it's there.
Oh yeah, 100%, 100% agree. And it's funny because I feel like the richest guys are not on social media. That's another thing. I feel like the richest guys, the guys who are really out here killing it, are not really on social media like that. So it's interesting seeing like both sides. But I think that social media does have a huge impact right now. I definitely think that depending on the person's strategy, that they should be on social media.
Mm.
Mm.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes a lot of sense. John, you've offered so much value here, really just chatting with you, getting to know you a bit more, kind of, a bit about your background, getting into the industry, multifamily. And I mean, overall, I'm impressed by your mindset. You've got a sharp mindset, your head's in the right place. And I'm looking forward to what you do in the future.
Let's get it, man. It's only up from here.
Yeah,
Thanks.
absolutely, John. Well, for maybe someone's listening and maybe they're in the Dallas Fort Worth area, or maybe they're in another part of the country. They just want to get a hold of you and talk some deals. Where can we find you?
I would say the best place to find me would be on my Instagram. Would be at Johnny Equity. That's the at symbol, JohnNNYEQUITY.
Johnny Equity. All right. Well, John, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been a real pleasure, and looking forward to having you back for the next one.
Hey, I really appreciate you having me on your show. I hope that your audience got some value out of it. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to reach me.
Yes, sir. Talk to you later.
I'll see you.